All right, ladies and gentlemen, by this time you have in fact finished the Kiterunner, and we are going to talk about a few final things. And at this point, I'm sure you're well into writing your essays, if not having completed them. In fact, I assume you have sent them to Smart Thinking and are receiving them back and putting the final touches on them. So let's talk first about character development in the final parts of the novel. And as we know, Hassan has made a reappearance at this point, and we find out what kind of person he has become. And it really should be no surprise to us that, in fact, he has become, as we would expect, a very honorable man that does what he feels is right. And I want you to take time and write down a few notes about how you know this, what you know about Hassan, and how you do using direct and indirect characterization to support your assessment. We'll talk about this in class. Now, another question to think about is why Hassan agreed to go with Rahim Khan. Rahim Khan asked him to come back with him and help take care of Amir and Baba's home in Afghanistan. And Hassan agreed to this because why? Well, because he has a definite sense of obligation and he still feels as though it is his duty to do what is asked of him by Amir's family and, in extension, Rahim Khan. One of the things you should think about when you're thinking about character development and different things that say or tell us something about Hassan is his acceptance of Sanyabar. Now, if you're not remembering, and I'm hoping you will, Sanyabar, of course, is Hassan's mother, who abandoned him when he was a child, and she was actually thought to be quite promiscuous. And when she came back, initially Hassan was unforgiving and would have nothing to do with her, but in fact, he did forgive her and became quite close to her. And what does this say about Hassan? This is another thought to kind of contemplate here. And I think you'll find that, you know, it really says that he has a big heart. It takes a lot to forgive someone of such transgressions. It certainly does. Amir assesses the photo of Hassan, and what conclusions does he come to based on the image? Well, when he looks at the photo, one of the things he really thinks about, or the conclusion he comes to, is that Hassan has moved past the incident when he was a child. He seems to be a very self-assured and happy and confident man. This probably gives Amir a sense of relief to some extent, because this thing that has been plaguing him his whole life has not evidently done permanent damage to Hassan. Now, of course, we know that Hassan is killed, and we know that he tried to save his wife. He was very stoic, we're told. He got on his knees and he was shot to death by the Taliban. Again, this speaks of his character. All of these are things you could certainly use in your direct and indirect characterization assessment. I'm sure there are also other instances, and I do encourage you to look through the final chapters of the book and come up with your own assessment. Again, we will talk about Hassan and his character in class. So let's talk about Amir. Now, Amir, as we said in the last presentation, he really, after his father died and he received the request from Rahim Khan, he really began to change. And we began to see him really come into his own, to become the person that perhaps he would want to be. His reaction to Rahim Khan's request seems to be in keeping with his previous actions. He's scared away. So at first, you know, when Rahim Khan tells him he wants him to go and rescue Sohrab, Amir is afraid. And Amir initially appears as though he will turn away. And so then we ask ourselves, what then is his motivation? What changes his mind? And very obviously, what ends up changing his mind is the fact that Sohrab is in fact his relative. And he finds out something really, really important about Baba. When he finds out that Baba, in fact, was Hassan's father, it changed his perspective. It made him maybe realize that no one goes through life without things and without issues that they may have not acted as they should have. And perhaps then he can look at his own life without that sense of dread and without that sense of just shame, because Baba also had a source of shame. Now, Amir has been carrying around this idea, though, if he would have acted differently years ago, things would have changed. Things could have been different. He could have not sent Hassan and Ali away, and maybe they would have gone to America with them. I mean, you have to ask yourself the question. Again, though, ladies and gentlemen, there are several times in your life where you look, where there are pivotal moments where you could have done one thing or you could have done another. And it doesn't really serve you to look back and say, well, if I would have done this, this would have happened, and then this would have happened, and my life as a result would have been better. We really have no way of knowing. And Amir has been plaguing himself with these thoughts. Refer to page 267. Why does Amir say that maybe Afghanistan is a hopeless place? And how does his reaction to Farid's question indicative of his changing perspective? He's really kind of changing his mind. He's forming his opinion as a grown man now. All right, we really kind of see in this last section of the novel, we see Amir really going into his own and kind of thinking over the events of his life. And this is certainly important if you're doing a character analysis of Amir. And I'm absolutely positive that there will be a question on your test regarding Amir and whether he has become good again. All right, so you definitely need to consider that. You need to consider his changing perspective from the time he was a young boy to now the time that he is an adult. Okay, and we see him move beyond that fear. We see him go first into Pakistan to meet with Rahim Khan, and then we see him actually go into Afghanistan to rescue his nephew. And we see his definite bravery when he fights with Asif, because this is a Taliban man. This is a very strong, very frightening man. It takes a lot of nerve to know to do this when he knows that it's such a dangerous thing. Now, in the end of the novel, many things happen that could be considered ironic. And I have told you that throughout the novel, there is a tremendous sense of irony in many of the things that have happened. This is a really important thing to focus on. So, first of all, let's go back to Sanyabar. What is ironic about her facial injury? When she comes back and she sees Hassan again for the first time in many years, okay, she's now disfigured. This is ironic. Why? It's ironic because for much of her life, she depended on her looks. She was always known as a very beautiful woman. And her looks are what made her look at Hassan and believe he was disfigured and disgusting, and it made her actually turn away from him. It is now ironic that those looks that she held in such high regard have been stripped from her. Okay? So that's kind of the first sense of irony that we'll talk about. It's also very ironic that Amir will be the one to save Hassan's son, because in fact, for much of Amir's life, he felt as though he took everything from Hassan. He felt as though he ruined Hassan's life. And also, it's thought that Hassan saved Amir time and time again. So the idea now of Amir turning around and saving Hassan's son is certainly ironic. There is a definite sense of irony with Amir leaving the money under the mattress for Farid's family. If you remember, Farid's family was very poor, and Amir ate food and realized then that he was eating the food that they had, and that was it. They had no food for several days. He left the money to replenish them, to help them, And of course, that sense of irony comes from the fact that he put money under Hassan's mattress, or he basically did the same thing to Hassan, really to incriminate him and not to help him. Now he's doing the same thing to save someone and to help them. And of course, we know that Asif has Sohrab, and this is sickeningly ironic, of course, because he is unfortunately doing the same thing to Hassan's son that he did to Hassan himself. So that's certainly ironic in a very awful way. And it is wonderfully, if you ask me, ironic in how Asif lost his eye. Asif lost his eye because Sohrab used a slingshot and basically took his eye out. If we remember very far back in the novel, good old Hassan stated that he would, in fact, do this. But now his son has actually come to the forefront and fulfilled the prophecy that his father made, or fulfilled the threat his father made so many years ago. All right, so guys, these are the main three things I wanted to focus on for the end of the novel. There are many other senses of irony here. For instance, at the very end of the novel, when Amir runs the kite for Sohrab, and he says, "For you 1,000 times over." That is exactly what Hassan said to him. So there's a definite sense of irony there. That's also something that Amir says to Farid, "For you 1,000 times over." We see the shift in Amir's character here, where Amir is certainly becoming someone that risks things for people, that repays people. He is becoming a man. He's becoming a man that is understanding. He's becoming a man that is honorable. And we certainly see at the end of this novel Amir being good again. All right? Is it a happy ending? That's something we're going to discuss in class. Many of my previous students said no, it is not a happy ending, and they're very upset about it. So we will see what you think, and we will move on from here. And I hope everyone is reading and doing everything they need to do.